righty, so the next module we're getting into, this is going to be more of another conceptual, call it investing philosophy that I think everybody who's in real estate needs to know. Now, before you start this video, you might be asking yourself, Jimmy, what did you do to your eye? So don't worry, wasn't a bar fight. I got tagged in the face in jiu-jitsu, but I want to get this course out. I want to get this course out to you. And then who doesn't want to buy real estate from a guy who occasionally walks around with black eyes from jiu-jitsu? So that explains the eye. Now back to the lesson. So we're going to be talking about one of the greatest books ever. I highly recommend you guys get this audiobook. This will really reinforce what I'm talking about on this module. It's a hilarious book called What I Learned Losing $1 Million. You can see it's by Jim Paul and Brendan Moynihan. Now, Brendan Moynihan, he's an economist, and Jim Paul is a trader who is constantly going up and down trading in the stock market. And it's a great book to talk about the psychology and really the emotional side of investing, because Jim Paul would be going up and down and just recounting his story. And then Brendan Moynihan would just be saying, as an economist, very objectively, here's what's going on. Here's the errors he made mentally and emotionally. Here's how a great investor escapes those errors. So absolutely hilarious book. And so that's where I got these ideas from. Now, as I was making the title for this module, Lessons Learned from $1 Million, I was like, thank God I didn't make those mistakes. But Jim Paul, he was making and losing a lot of money, and he lost over $1 million, but I believe he did make it back. So here's the agenda on this module. We're going to talk about lessons learned from how I lost $1 million, discuss what your number one job as an investor is. We're going to dispel some myths about investing and risk taking, and we're going to review how to not be a gambler and how to be an investor. So what this module and the next module is going to all come down to your number one job as an investor, which is develop a plan and developing a buying criteria. I'm going to kind of go through the definitions and a few of the concepts on this module. And the next module, we're going to talk about your buying criteria and how you develop that plan. So first of all, to get started, we're going to define some terms. We're going to define external losses, internal losses, a distinct event, a continuous process, an inherent risk, and created risk. Those 6 terms you have to understand as an investor. And we're going to spend some time doing this because this is one of another favorite book of mine, 12 Rules for Life. But rule 10, you got to be precise in your speech. If you want to be an investor, you have to be precise in your speech. So there's 2 types of losses. There's an internal loss and there's an external loss. So an external loss, those are losses such as a bet, a game, or a contest, or losing money. But it revolves around an objective fact. A loss is objective when it's the same for you, for me, and anyone else. It's not objective. It's not open to subjective or individual interpretation. So the horse won the race and I was not the jockey on the winning horse. So I lost that race. The United States won the gold medal in the 2024 Olympics for basketball. Objective event. The game is over. An objective event always has a defined endpoint. And it's very clear who won. Monday Night Football this week, the Chiefs won. So I'm really beating a dead horse. It was an external win. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it was an external loss. Now, their internal losses, this is where things get to the psychological side, things get a little spicy. Internal losses, like this guy on this GIF here, internal losses are subjective. It has to do with the individual person saying, I'm a loser. It's not just, I'm bad at this, I lost this. It's open to interpretation, and generally the interpretation, it frowns bad on the individual. So now a discrete event versus continuous process, another concept you need to understand. So now a discrete event is any activity with a defined ending point, such as a football game like we've been talking about, a spin of the roulette wheel. Now a continuous process is something that has no discrete ending point. It keeps going on and on and on. If you look at this loop from Principles with Ray Dalio, it's all the loops. It's a continuous process. And so losses from continuous process are much more prone to become internalized because, like all internal losses, there is no predetermined ending point. So Brendan Moynihan makes this point. People tend to internalize losses on continuous processes because there's no blow of the whistle that ends the game. When the roulette wheel stops spinning, that's it. It's done. So generally, the cognitive error people make is on a continuous process. They tend to internalize all their losses. In continuous process, it's a double-edged sword. but the participant gets continuously make and remake decisions, which can affect how much money he or she makes or loses. So you've seen lottery winners, they made one good bet, but growing wealth is a continuous process. And so they think their luck in this one bet, which made them wealthy, means they know how to produce wealth. And it's a cognitive disconnect for them person. So that's what I mean by double-edged sword is on the one edge, if only wealth building was a discrete event that had an ending point, it'd be so much easier. But a continuous process, wealth building, it's a continuous process. So you're constantly getting the ability to fail or succeed or get better or get worse. So it's kind of the fun of the game. Those who really succeed at it see that part as fun. Those who don't want to get better, who don't want to play that game, do not enjoy that double-edged sword. So now let's define risk, because this is very important to define in wealth building. So risk is simply a possibility of suffering a loss. It's called probability only if you can assign a numerical value to the likelihood of the loss. And Brendan Moynihan in the book, he's adamant about this. And Nassim Taleb and Anti-Fragile, they are adamant about this, that probability, it's kind of useless. It's very hard to assign a numerical loss to the likelihood of a loss occurring. So when I hear this investment has a certain probability of succeeding, it's like, who cares? Like if you lose, it doesn't necessarily matter. The loss is the loss. And then on the reverse side, luck is simply the possibility of enjoying a game. You hear people say, I make my own luck. I think it is possible to create your own luck by having a great decision-making process that allows you the possibility of enjoying the game and mitigating your risk. So now let's talk about the different types of risk. So there's two types of risk, inherent risk and created risk. So inherent risk is a natural occurrence in both unorganized markets and organized markets. So you guys, everybody knows this, but driving on the highway has its own inherent risk. You can do certain things to mitigate that risk. You can drive responsibly, you can drive defensively, but there's still, no matter what, the instant you hit the ignition, you've incurred risk, the possibility of a loss. And then in the military, this was very easy for me to learn. I knew on every mission, and we were trained to this, like you could not eliminate all risk, but you could mitigate it. You know, by planning, by training, you could definitely mitigate your risk, but you were never going to be in a risk-free environment. And so I learned as a military officer, my job was to mitigate risk. Now, here is created risk. This is where things with gambling and investing start to get mixed and matched together. Created risk is this. Created risk is risk that is not a natural byproduct of an activity of itself. The roulette wheel could be spun, the football game could be played, and the horse race could be won without a monetary loss occurring. So the football game, the horse race, the roulette wheel, people create their own risk, their own possibility of loss when they actually bet on these type of things. So then you might ask yourself, why is there so much talk of gambling in the financial industry? Well, let's define a few more terms to kind of clarify that as well. So definition number one is betting. Betting is agreement between two parties where the party proved wrong about the outcome of an uncertain event will forfeit a stipulated thing or sum to the other party. To boil it all down, a bet is about being right or wrong. Now, gambling's actually a derivative of betting. To gamble is to wager money on the outcome of a game, contest, or event, or to play a game of chance for money or other stakes. For example, when you're a kid on the playground, I bet you can't do that. And what happens if you lose the bet? Well, when you're a kid, you don't have any money, but you're betting on who was right and who could predict the future. Betting's about right or wrong. Gambling is betting, but it's just betting with money involved. Okay, so now let's define some more terms. I told you this module is all about being precise in your speech. So the definition of investing, and I know I had this definition in module 2 of the course, 2 or 3, but just as a quick refresher, investing is parting with capital the expectation of safety, of principal, and an adequate return on capital in the form of dividend, interest, or rents. Since the return on capital takes the form of periodic payments of interest or dividends, investing indicates the intention to be separated from the capital for an extended period of time. Therefore, investing is generally associated with a long time horizon. Just remember, the thing about investing, it's departing with capital with the expectation of its safe return, and then you're getting your return on your investment in the form of dividends, interest, or rent. And investing is usually associated with a relatively long time horizon. Now, the media's definition of investing. This is important because so much is skewed by the media when it comes to finances, money, all that stuff. The media's definition of investing is parting with capital by any means of getting the original principal back plus some more, regardless of the risk the original capital was subjected to. Like the media never talks about, all they do is talk about rate of return. They never talk about, hey, what was the original risk that the capital was subjected to? Because that's a key part of being an investor. Part of your job as an investor is making sure your capital is not subjected to unnecessary risk. So I'm going to get into GameStop in a second. Now, what is the definition of speculating? Speculating in its simplest form is buying for resale rather than use or income, as in the case of commodities, financial instruments, respectively. So speculating is parting with capital in the expectation of capital appreciation. Remember, there's no mention of right or wrong in these two definitions. So it's not about betting. It's not about being right or wrong. This was the hardest thing for me. He also talks about in the book is salespeople are generally poor investors. And when I first went from sales to investing, I really struggled because my job as a salesperson was to persuade, to convince people that I was right. And so I had to really unlock my brain that it didn't matter if I was right or wrong. I had to minimize my risk, subject my capital to the minimal amount of risk, and give myself the most opportunity to be lucky or have the greatest possibility of a gain. So let's get into gambling and investing. When you do a flip key with me, what do you guys think you're doing? You're not investing, you're speculating. There's nothing wrong with speculating, but you're buying for you're buying for resale rather than use. Now, when you buy a bird key, you're actually investing. You're departing with capital, the minimum amount of capital possible, but you're still departing with capital. You're expecting to get your return in rent, which technically would be dividend. If you're a private lender and you get interest, you're expecting to be departed with capital and you get your money back in the form of interest. Now, the great thing about real estate is that bird key, you keep it as an investment for 5 to 10 years and you still get the benefit of appreciation. You can still liquidate that asset. But if you guys remember, there's a great Netflix show about this, about GameStop. The stock market went nuts around probably 2018, 2019 for GameStop. And so if you saw a tip on Reddit and bought GameStop shares, do you think you invested or gambled? If the only information you had going into that game or going into that trade was that you saw something on Reddit, you're probably not very well informed and you probably did it to be right or wrong. So I would say most of the people who did that GameStop trade were gambling. Now, what about if you bet on the winner of a Super Bowl? Did you invest or gamble? That one's pretty clear. You gambled because you're betting on the outcome. It's about being right or wrong. There's just money stakes involved. So when you buy a stock thinking it will go up in value, are you investing, speculating, or betting? Most likely you're speculating. Now, if you're doing things irresponsibly and it's about your ego and you want to be right, then you're probably back to betting. So we went through this example, when you buy a rental property, you're investing, speculating, or investing. You're investing. I hope this is giving you guys clarity on these type of concepts. So nowadays, here it is, gambling versus investing. Markets and gambling are similar only in that they each involve the possibility of monetary loss. Like in my brain, I had to separate the concept of gambling versus investing and know when I was investing and when I was gambling. And really the reason the media mishmashes these two together is because they're similar in that they both involve the possibility of monetary loss, but they are not the same thing. Here's the other thing. Gambling is a choice to wager. Gambling creates risk. Investing means you assume risk and you know your job is to manage the risks that already exist. That's where gambling to me is a little bit irresponsible. Sure, I'll go to a casino and gamble $250 on blackjack as entertainment, but I know I'm paying for entertainment. If I come back with more than $250, it just means I paid less for my entertainment. And then if I come back with more than $250, I actually won that night, it was cool. I got paid to be entertained, but I'm definitely not investing. So I just wish, the reason I put this in the course is I wish someone would have told me this before I started. Because at the beginning of my investing journey, it was about being right or wrong. It was about proving a point. It was about my ego. I thought I was a smart person who was kind of stuck and underachieving. So winning on investing and being right, I got it. It was all about me, was my goal. So I had to get the idea beaten out of me by taking several losses and actually become an investor and stop caring about being right and wrong and just try to get a gain and then become obsessed with getting better at my buying criteria, my processes, and creating more value and gaining more. So the distinguishing characteristic of a gambler or a bettor is whether he wants the satisfaction of being right in his prediction or the entertainment of participating respectively. A lot of people make certain bets in the stock market because they have that option to, even though I don't think Wall Street's a casino, because they want to be right. They want to be told they're smart. So the bettor is interested in being right. His ego is on the line. That's the key line of the whole book. So the distinguished feature of gambling is it deals with the unknown, with pure chance. Money is simply the ticket to the game. It's the tickets to the gun show. So when is a business venture gambling? When could buying a course on the internet be gambling? Well, if a person approaches a business risk or a risk in the financial markets for excitement, then he's gambling. He's not investing, regardless of how much control he supposedly has over the outcome of the outcome. So here's part of your job. So the probability of market events is not open to any kind of numerical evaluation. We went over that earlier. All you can really do is determine an amount of exposure as opposed to the probability. All you can do is determine your amount of exposure. Probabilities are meaningless. So as Brendan Moynihan writes, all you can actually determine is the amount of exposure as opposed to the probability that the market will or will not go to a certain price. Most people are looking, when they make their investment decisions, on probabilities. They should be looking at their exposure. So therefore, all you can do is manage your exposure and losses, not predict profits. That was a key line for me, is to manage my exposure. And remember, this is from Nassim Taleb and Brendan Moynihan. I actually found out about this book from the book Anti-Fragile. Return on investment is irrelevant if risk of ruin is present. What does that mean? It means this. So if you could lose it all, it doesn't matter if you could make 20%. If you expose your capital to that amount of loss, doesn't matter. And I did this in the Anti-Fragile call. The great thing about what we do here is we take a no loss, pretty much your down payment, and we have a ability to make what's the right word? The ability to have exponential gain because of the 4 pillars: appreciation, cash flow, tax advantages, and the ability to use leverage. And your no loss is simply your down payment. And to really lose that down payment, not make your payments in your mortgage, it's very hard to do. So your risk of ruin is pretty much nil, but really all you're risking in real estate is your down payment. So that's kind of the glory of it. When I was going through these concepts and learning about this, that's when I knew this was where I wanted to go. Next, all you can do is have a plan. Participating to be right is betting, and betting for excitement is gambling. In order to be investing, by definition, you must have a plan. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next modular, is that you must have a plan. We're going to go how to formulate that plan and recognize, as a passive investor, it's really all you can control and all you can do. So I'll see you on the next module for that.